Hello, hello, testing, 1, 2, 3, coming to you not live from the comfort of my orange kitchen. Today I'll be speaking with you about a topic close to my and any other writer's heart, author intention versus audience perception. Now, what exactly am I referring to? Well, thank you for asking, no one. I'm referencing this phenomenon that's reoccurring in media and has been since media has been consumed, in which a writer writes one thing and an audience takes it a completely different way. I know that we have all been in English classes where a teacher says something symbolizes something and we're saying, really? Seems a stretch. But it isn't as if we can actually ask the author what their true intentions were when writing. And so I thought to myself, I should do a controlled experiment where we actually can ask the author what they mean. Hi, I'm Jessica Ford, and today I'll be your token author. Now, I'm no stranger to the writing scene. In fact, I've written whole-length novels before. And I noticed something after writing this one, I Don't Smoke Flowers Anymore, and giving it to the world, that people thought things they weren't supposed to think. One, that I was horrifically depressed, and two, that I smoked cigarettes, which I don't. If I were a flavor of ice cream, I would be vanilla. And they wanted a plethora of other things, like why I named Asheville, why my characters were named Flynn and Allie, and other things that I just did not have an answer for, which furthered my interest in this subject. And so, for the sake of this presentation, I am a certified author, okay? But I wanted to make sure I wasn't the only author that felt this way, that my work was being presented in a way I hadn't originally intended. So I looked to one of my favorite authors, Ray Bradbury. As a lot of you know, Bradbury wrote a book called Fahrenheit 451, which is actually well known across the board and is frequently clawed at for meaning. Bradbury actually addressed this idea of author intention in another of his books, Zen and the Art of Writing, which for some reason has like 10 different covers. I don't know why. He talked about these intentions and perceptions in terms of Fahrenheit 451, saying, and I quote, "A last discovery. I write all my novels and stories, as you have seen, in a great surge of delightful passion. Only recently, glancing at the novel, I realized that Montag is named after a paper manufacturing company, and Faber, of course, is a maker of pencils. What a sly thing my subconscious was to name them thus and to not tell me." It is easy to say that while a reader could obviously Google Faber and Montag and come to the conclusion that Bradbury named them for those reasons, he didn't. A writer's subconscious is a funny thing. I mean, we insert little details without even knowing they're there. Bradbury didn't intend to have it that way. And the same thing happened to me in terms of I Don't Smoke Flowers Anymore, such as the fly and Flynn for them wanting to get to the sky, Allie, the ally, and the Ash and Asheville for their pervasive smoking habits. I did not intend for these names to have the subliminal meaning that they do, but perhaps my subconscious did. Now, to drive back to center with audience perception of pieces, let's look at my controlled experiment. I went through this twice. The first time without realizing it was part of the experiment I would later be hosting. You'll get it later. For this, I chose a shorter piece, a story I'd written called Glazed Green Eyes. You can read the story in the 2019 issue of the ACAD Lit Review if you have it. I was fortunate enough to be the winning entry, which of course is very flattering to me. To give you some background, Glazed Green Eyes is a short story about Jamie Anderson and Noel Whitaker Witt, two young men returning to America after a war. It's not specified which war, but there was one. So what I did for my experiment was hold a controlled talk about the story, having my peers analyze it as though I wasn't in the room as the author and had no answers, and it was just another story we were discussing in Lang. And here's what they noticed. One, they noticed the color green, because obviously, if they had noticed the color blue, I'd be upset. They also, of course, noticed how frequently I mentioned the eyes themselves. And honestly, in hearing it being read out loud, I noticed the eyes a little too much as well. How they traced the landscape, the untold emotion within them. Ooh, the art. They also pointed out the toy soldiers I often reference. And in discussion of it, one of my peers said, it may be to symbolize how war is often glorified rather than focused on those actually within it. These toys that are made to glorify tragedy without actually thinking of the real people involved. I mean, it's a great analysis of the story for sure. Not really what I intended, but it's cool. My peers also noticed the talk of wounds and bullet holes, how Jamie wishes that he had some sort of mark from the war so that people would be able to see it on him, see what he'd been through. And they spoke of that being another facet of the glorification of the fight. And hey, why not? But there was one thing they noticed above all else. They determined that Jamie and Whit were very gay. I mean, that was the big takeaway. I wrote one line in that story about Jamie wanting to get out of his uniform and just wear a blanket, and it was game over. I mean, every notes page just had gay written on it in big letters, as if that was very crucial to the comprehension of the actual story. And that's all well and good. It was fascinating hearing what other people's intuitions told them about my work, but here's the thing, they're not gay. Not intentionally, anyway. But that's the beauty of author intent, isn't it? I didn't mean to make Jamie and Whit gay, but since they were so heavily perceived as such, It created this beautiful turmoil of unspoken love between the pair. I mean, two soldiers coming back from war who were never going to see each other again, who either had been having a tumultuous love affair overseas or were deeply infatuated with each other, but hadn't had the confidence to say it yet. I mean, it is enough to write a whole book. But that was never what I intended when I first wrote the short story. And then, of course, there's the question. The big be-all, end-all question. Why green eyes? And there were a lot of great ideas from my peers. One was that it was because they were coming back from Vietnam and the atmosphere of the jungles, all that hazy green, was so ingrained in their memory that it had tainted everything they were coming back to, which is a beautiful analysis. But no, it was World War II. Cool idea, though. My favorite, by far my favorite comment was in the first group I talked to. It was from a freshman at the time who read the story for their English class. I was not aware at the time that the class was reading it until Miss Towery invited me in, which was a horrific moment in my life, especially when the children were asking me what the words mean, and as a writer, we've established I know nothing. But. One girl asked me, and it was about the green eyes. She pointed out his eyes are green. And green is the color of envy. And obviously, Jamie and Whit are jealous of one another, and eyes are the windows to the soul. So we should be able to infer from this that the green represents the envy he has in his soul for the life that Jamie is living. Wow. Like, wow. I mean, just a gorgeous idea. I wish to God I had thought of it. But no. Why green eyes? Because Robert Sheehan has green eyes, and he was what I imagined what it looked like. And that's it. And that's the reason I made every single choice in that story, because at the time I happened to be super attracted to Robert Sheehan. So shout out Robert Sheehan's eyes for making me sound like an intellectual. Listen, here's the bottom line. A lot of writers don't know what they're doing, like have no earthly idea. They are picking colors because they like colors. I mean, you can pull meaning out of anything, but just because it wasn't intended doesn't make it any less true. I mean, heck, if you want Whit's eyes to symbolize envy, then they symbolize envy. So a note for writers out there, you don't have to intend anything for meaning to come across. I mean, don't write a story with a message in mind. If you start out with a be-all, end-all message, you're not writing a story, you are writing an agenda. It is going to be explicit and forced. No one wants to read an agenda, my friend. Trust me, whether you mean one or not, a point will come across to your audience has been established. And to end, I'll leave you with this beautiful poem snippet by Ray Bradbury. Art will fly if held too lightly. Art will die if held too tightly. Lightly, tightly, how do I know whether I'm holding or letting art go? And the truth is, no one knows, my man. You just gotta jump. You gotta jump head first into art and don't find meaning. Meaning, I guarantee, will find you. Thank you. I'm Jessica Ford. It's been a pleasure.